Okay. Let's hope this is set up good over there. Hello. Welcome to Dead Air. I'm your host, Evil Daddy, also known as Dwight. If you're watching, you can probably see this is a different setup than I usually do. Um, I'm hoping this doesn't look or sound too much like shit, but I thought this would be a fun setup. So, got a little stand. Kind of feels like I'm doing a stand-up show, just not funny. At some point, I might just take this off because it feels weird just having my free hands. But I also got my book right here. This allows me to kind of go through my checklist as I'm going. But yeah, it's been a while. Welcome back. How you been? I got a haircut and stuff. I look a little different. Um, I couldn't think of really a better thing to come back to or actually make me want to sit down or I guess stand up this time and make another podcast episode than a new Resident Evil game. I don't know if you can see, I've got my Leon Kennedy Dr. Pepper shirt on, which probably lets you know that we are talking about Resident Evil 9 Requiem today. I need to try not to walk away from the microphone. I've got my levels right next to me, but we'll see. We'll see how this goes. Resident Evil 9. I know I'm a bit late to the party here. Came out in February. I got it the day it came out. Probably put like 6 hours into it that week. Maybe like 6 to 8 hours. Then work got just real crazy. I couldn't play video games very much. And when I did, I didn't really feel like being stressed out. If you've played Resident Evil 9, you can probably understand how stressful at least the first half of that game is. I was getting my ass kicked a decent amount. I'm going to get into spoilers just kind of this entire video. So my spoiler-free review is if you like Resident Evil, play it. It's really good. It's a super good game. A lot of people are saying it's their favorite Resident Evil. Not my favorite. Definitely not a bad game. Not a bad game at all. It's great. It's got some parts that I didn't love, but the parts that I liked, I think outweigh the parts I didn't love about it, and we'll get into that as we go. We'll start off with how the game chronologically goes. Also, I've already given the spoiler warning. If you plan on playing it, go play it, then come back, listen to me. I've got a guy walking by with a cute dog. There's a big window in front of me. There's probably going to be people watching me do this, but I've got the lights off. Hopefully I'm a little incognito in here. The first part of it is where we get our new protagonist, Grace. And the Grace parts are what I was iffy on going into it. I know a lot of people that like horror games like them because they're scary. I wouldn't really say I'm a horror video game person. I'm horror movie, definitely, but there's something about video games that when they're scary, I can't make myself keep going through them. Something about being in control of the character. Things like Outlast. I've never beaten an Outlast game because they scare the shit out of me. I don't like going down those corridors. Amnesias, things like that. And I had a really bad feeling going into this with the demo showing Grace's parts at the beginning being that, and knowing from the get-go, I know they kind of tried to like beat around the bush, like, oh, Leon might be in it. We're not going to say Leon's not in it. We all knew Leon was going to be in it. It's in Raccoon City. There's no reason to go back to Raccoon City if you're not going to have Leon or Claire. Leon being a bigger character than Claire is for the most part, which kind of stinks. We should have more Claire. Speaking of Claire, there's some characters that we didn't see in this that I really wanted to. Maybe people like that more because it takes away the fan service a bit. But as a Resident Evil fan, we like fan service. I want you to show me all the characters that I'm in love with that I haven't seen have a new game. I mean, Claire hasn't had a game since Revelations 2, which I didn't even play all of Revelations 2. That's still in my backlog. The Revelations games are fun. One was really fun. I don't think I beat either of them. I plan to go back at some point. But back to Grace. Good and bad. The bad is it is very much like Resident Evil 7 diving deeper into the first-person horror genre, which is what I think a lot of people that are newer to the franchise that started with 7 want out of it. Not exactly what I want, but I was willing to push through if it meant I got to play Leon. What it does in the game, though, is the first half, maybe it took me a while to beat. I talked to people that were like, I beat the game in like 12 hours. I beat the game in like 10 hours. I beat the game in 18. It took me 20. I would say 10 or 11 of that was the first half of Grace stuff. And it was really just because I was like, I don't want to keep playing as her. It's scaring the shit out of me. And I just want to do like spin kicks and suplexes and axe parries on all these people. Because the Leon gameplay is so good. Maybe some of my favorite gameplay, honestly, since Resident Evil 4. Like, I think Resident Evil 4 was the pinnacle of like a third-person shooter gameplay, the remake. And it kind of just takes that, makes it a little slower, makes it better. The Grace parts, they trickle in little bits that have Leon. You get like blue balled with Leon scenes where, hey, we know you just did 2 or 3 hours of Grace getting chased by this big lady that hates the dark or hates the light. We'll give you 20 minutes of some Leon chainsaw stuff, and then we'll send you right back into it. First playthrough, which I only have played it once so far, but as a first playthrough, I was really just going like, please, can I have Leon? I didn't want them to do the Resident Evil 6 thing of like picking your path of going like, I want to play as Leon, because I feel like that if I had that choice, I probably wouldn't have finished Grace parts. So I'm glad that it didn't let me do that. That way I could experience Grace parts. They are really good. It's not exactly what I want out of a Resident Evil game, but it takes the formula of like the first Resident Evil and Resident Evil 2 remake and gives you like that kind of haunted house, like really good level design of where you're walking around. You're like, oh, this door is locked. I know I'm going to have to find something for this. This character is unique. They're probably going to have something that makes it the entry level for me to get to this next portion. I think pacing wise for me, I'm happy they trickled in the Leon, even though I was mad whenever it would end. But if they didn't do that, you might not be hearing me talk about the game. The Grace parts are super scary. I would say take the scariest parts of like Resident Evil 7, which you could maybe argue right now or prior to this game was the scariest Resident Evil. Like the atmosphere that they built in Resident Evil 7, I thought was terrifying the whole time. But Ethan was new. Resident Evil was finally back. I liked how they did the Louisiana setting and the found footage things they added, as found footage being one of my favorite subgenres of horror movies. They take kind of the scariest parts of that and throw it here. It feels like at times you have that antagonist that's like following you around, similar to like a Mr. X or Nemesis. I would say it's closer to how Nemesis is done in Resident Evil 3 remake, where it's not like a looming presence that you always have to worry about. You know that Nemesis is going to pop up. It feels more scripted when I think they call her the girl, when the girl appears. There are certain sections. I think actually the very first section is kind of a Mr. X, like following you around, like stay away from her, flip the lights on, turn this light on so she goes there, throw a glass bottle there, go back. It's the best parts of Grace to me are when you get past that first part where it is just the girl and you're actually in the orphanage. Is it the orphan? No, the care center. You're in the care center and it opens up a bit more. It's in no way like an open world here, which is not what I wanted from Resident Evil anyway. And we kind of get that with Leon, which a lot of people online are saying they don't like that part. When I get to it, spoiler alert, I like that part. I like that a lot. I think what they did best with Grace is giving her so much enemy variety. The chef being one of the coolest like side sub bosses in it. When you first meet the big baby monster, that may be one of the best scenes in the game. When that happened, that scared the shit out of me. But I didn't feel like the worst part for Grace, and when they have protagonists, even with like Ethan Winters, at certain times where you feel helpless in a Resident Evil game doesn't feel like Resident Evil to me. I like being these like uber badass like special agents that maybe not at the beginning you're able to take on everything. You're scared, you're low supplies, you don't know where you're going. But once you know like your area, like the back of your hand, and you're picking up ammo, you're upgrading your weapons, you're getting more health, you're getting more stamina. I want to be able to like kick ass in a Resident Evil game. I like the power trip that goes with it. Grace doesn't really get a power trip. There were times where I think I would have liked the Grace sections tremendously more if they just gave her like a dodge of some sort, like Jill's dodge in 3. Even Leon doesn't have a dodge in 4, but being able to like kind of strafe around and get around, I felt like I couldn't do the Resident Evil strategy that's in, I would say, almost every other game. I haven't played every game, but where you kind of bait out zombies and then you go buy the zombies and you try not to shoot the zombies because you're saving your ammo for when you really need it. I felt like I always had to shoot zombies, and I always had to make the hemolytic injector, which at the beginning you don't really have much of. I ended up barely making any ammo for Grace towards the ends of her part, where I would just make with my with the crafting system the hemolytic injectors because they're one shots. What they also stop in the game is they have these things called blister heads. I think they're blister heads, which are very similar to like the Crimson heads in Resident Evil 1, where if you don't kill something in a certain way, there's a chance it comes back later even stronger. And the blister heads are way stronger than I even remember the Crimson. Crimson heads kind of just fucking one-shot you and stuff. But the blister heads are difficult enough that when you're playing as Leon, they're hard to kill. And I guess I got in the rhythm there of I knew what things to craft. So I was getting better with Grace. Once I knew all the paths where I could go around, I knew like the chef was on this path and I could go around this way. Just had to wait for him to go around. I'm so impatient. I don't like waiting. I like being able to just like dart through these zombies and kind of like juke them out. Grace doesn't let you do that. I think her as a character is good. I think she's a lot stronger of a protagonist, like writing wise and lore wise, than Ethan. Ethan felt more like, oh, we're going to put the player into this character and they're going to be kind of voiceless. Resident Evil 8, he gets a bit more of his own voice. Grace is always her own character. You already kind of know a bit of who she is with her being like an FBI agent and things like that. Who her mom is, Alyssa, being from the Outbreak games, which I've never played. I've watched videos on the Outbreak games that they seem interesting. That would be cool after this to see now that people are introduced to the Ashcraft family. Ashcroft? Is it Ashcroft? I think it's Ashcroft. Getting some sort of entry that gives me more about those, which maybe they could do with DLC. See what her mom was doing, maybe in between the games or even before the Outbreak games, going into the beginning of Outbreak. The Grace parts are not for me. I know people that think the Grace parts are the best part of the game, and more power to them. But when I want a Resident Evil game, the Leon parts are exactly what I want out of it. Like I said, about halfway through, you get to a story swap, or I guess a point of view swap, where you go from being helpless Grace just trying to survive in the care center to badass Leon, who is borderline just a monster in his own right. This is all spoilers. Like at one point you are parrying and fighting a super tyrant, which you don't really see characters do. I mean, Chris in 5 goes up against Wesker, who's basically Neo from the Matrix. So Chris has his like super moments where he feels unstoppable, but Leon in this, it felt jarring at first, going from Resident Evil 4 remake where you're like young, spry, but experienced. You're not like as weak as he is in 2. You're actually exponentially stronger in 4, and you're kicking ass. you're running around, you're shooting things, you're bringing like trails of zombies around you so you can throw like some grenades down. You're shooting in the kneecaps so you can do your spin kicks and your suplexes. In 9, Leon kind of the best way I noticed playing was trucking through the enemies. You're not even really trying to dodge them anymore, and they don't give you a dodge, but they do give you the ability, as far as I know, to parry everything. And they're very nice about the parry window. I didn't want this to be, I'm not like a Souls guy, Soulsborne games. I get my ass kicked in those. If you haven't noticed from how I talked about the grace parts of it, I don't like being weak in video games. I like my little power trips in them. I want to figure out things, and once I know how to do it, I should be able to be better at the game, not feel like I'm a weakling throughout all of it. Once you figure out that you can kind of parry everything, whenever a zombie goes to grab you, parry him, beat the shit out of him with your axe, shoot him in the knee, do the spin kick, get really cool environmental kills where if you're like close to a wall and you get the indicator that goes to like melee them, he'll run up and he'll like throw them against the wall and like smash their head in. The last half of it, you get to do all that with Leon, and I loved it. People didn't like the pacing of, and a shitty thing about me reviewing this so late is I now have so many other people's input from what I've watched online and from what my friends have said when they're like, have you beaten it yet? Have you beaten it yet? People don't like the outskirts of Raccoon City part, I guess. I will say that was one of my favorite parts of the game, actually opening up to get to choose, or at least the illusion of choosing where you're going as Leon, and getting to do the thing of like, oh, I went through this really hard like apartment area and now I kick down this ladder. So if I need to go back there, now I have 3 different directions where I can come back through, or I could go and I can farm some zombies, because there's a point system that it introduces with it. It's kind of arcade-like. For every zombie you kill, you have like a bracelet that keeps track of points per zombie kill, and you can pick up bracelets throughout that already have points on them, and you use those points to then upgrade your weapons or buy new weapons. And there's not a shit ton of variety with the weapons. I think the weapons you have are good. I found myself doing what I did with 4 and basically just using shotgun and pistol. I always like max out my pistol because I was a big Red 9 guy. And this one, I got the second pistol and immediately upgraded it. The Silencer 9. When you get to the upgrading too, it added, when you add a sight, like I added a red dot sight to my pistol, it does what I remember first seeing in like Metal Gear Solid 4, where it's a third person game, but when you aim down sight, like when you aim with a scope, it aims down sights, and went first person. I didn't really even give that a chance. I turned that off immediately. And I think that was kind of to blend together Grace and Leon's gameplay to make it feel more cohesive. I think if I were to replay it, I'd probably play Grace in third person just because I prefer third person games. Well, I guess at least third person horror games. But once I started opening up and finding collectibles and upgrading my guns, it felt like that whole pre-Raccoon City Police Department part where you're on the outskirts was, all right, I need to get as good as I can at the game right here. I'm going to have a couple set pieces that pop up, like the gas station being one of the coolest parts in the game, in my opinion. Well, at least one of the coolest scenes, where you come back out of the gas station, there's like the 2 chainsaw guys, and you come out with your chainsaw because you just killed one in the gas station, and it leads to like a chainsaw parry, like quick time event where you're like dueling with these chainsaws. Gets me hard as a rock thinking about that. That was super cool. Going to Raccoon City afterwards, if you felt like you were figuring out Leon in that part, now you have figured out Leon. Now you know how to play him, or at least you should. And I don't want to say it's like a cakewalk. If anything, I died more in the Leon parts, probably because of like overconfidence with like my parrying and things, than I did at the Grace parts. I don't think I died in the game until like the second Leon part that pops up, where you go against the big baby in like the attic, which kind of a standard Resident Evil boss fight there, where you just run around until you shoot it enough and then it dies. There's not a whole lot of variety in that fight. It's a little claustrophobic. I would say even at that point, I didn't have the parry down yet. even though they give you a really big window for it, I was kind of reluctant to use it because I just wasn't used to it yet. Once you get used to that and you're running around, the parrying is so good because they get rid of the fact that you have to, like, your melee weapon, if it were to break, you then have to go to the merchant and like repair it. Then you can go back out. Adding the sharpening block in this one was such a good quality of life addition to the game. Being like, all right, I'm going to go through this fight. I'm going to parry all these things. I know I've got like 2 more parries left on this, or if the chainsaw comes, I know I got 1 parry, then I have to run away before it breaks it, and I can sharpen it and go right back in there. It gives more room for mistakes. And I think if you played on a harder difficulty, that makes it still have the feeling of your badass Leon, but you could die at any time. I played on standard, standard modern, where you can save as much as you want and things like that. There's another one, like standard classic, where you had to use the ink ribbons as grace. I don't know, because I didn't play that way, if they make Leon do that, because Leon saves through like computers he finds. I would guess there's still a limited amount of saves. I could be wrong there. I know for the grace parts, if you have the ink ribbon, it would make it way harder because the limited saves. I don't play limited saves. I get my ass kicked. I saved all the time. I hate replaying parts if I have to like run all the way back through. Another reason why I don't like Souls games is getting my ass kicked by this boss and then spending another like 10 minutes going back and hoping that I can beat all the things on the way there or run by them. I just don't have the patience for it. But the police department, actually right before the police department, there's another really cool part. I think it's on your way to get one of the pieces for the detonator, the second or third. I'm assuming the order is kind of what you choose. The third one might be you have to do that third. The first and second made it seem like I could have gone to either to find it, but the third one, you like zip line in and you're in these buildings that are all crumbled on each other, and you go to this place where it's a bunch of glass on the ground, like windows on their side, and when the zombies are coming, you have to like shoot the windows so that they fall through. That part I thought as a design was really cool. It would have been cool if it wasn't just that part though. I would have liked if they introduced that and then later on you had the variety to choose, like, oh, there's these windows, and if I crack through this, I can kick them out of it. Or if I shoot this, I can run back through. And maybe there wasn't, I just didn't see it, but it felt like something you had to learn just for that part. It would have been cool if they utilized that again. Guess maybe it's a bit more special because it's only at that part. I did get my ass kicked right after I killed all those. You like break a window so you can go up, and I wasn't even low health. I just saw some zombies coming at me, and the zombies with guns were hiding at the top, and they shot me, and I panicked and I fucking fell off. So that was a part I had to redo. But you go to the police center or the police department, and you get the huge wave of nostalgia of going back to Resident Evil 2. And it's one of the most nostalgic parts of it because you're playing as Leon. And if you've played Resident Evil 2 or Resident Evil 2 Remake, you're kind of going through these memories with him. And what you learn about Leon here, and they kind of briefly mention some dialogue things or just him talking with Sherry, who Sherry is kind of like an oracle for you. If you're familiar with like Batman, she's the one in your ear telling you everything that's going on. Where Leon's going through survivor's guilt, it seems, of not being able to save everyone at the police department. And it's interesting to see what he's really resonated with, what has traumatized him, because obviously in 4 he saves the day, in 6 he saves the day. I'm assuming they count 6 as still canonical going through these things. They might retcon some stuff, but as far as I know, like Resident Evil 6's Leon part was okay. It was probably the only good part in my opinion of that. The Chris parts are kind of just funny. But seeing his survivor's guilt and seeing how he's made it his almost final mission in his head, that as long as he can finish what he feels like he started or couldn't finish before, if he like dies with that, he's happy. It's like his final mission. Makes Leon feel more in depth as a character, which is really interesting to me because a big reason why I like Leon isn't because of his depth or his writing. I get his writing is a big part of it, but the B movie superhero that he has became, like with his cheesy one-liners, and you still have those here, but the dichotomy of his outlook on how he handled things in Raccoon City and how he seems to actually feel is really interesting. Like on the surface level outside, he's calm and collected. He's not really afraid of anything. He's still making his one-liners. At one point, fucking Grace, I think Grace asked him, she's like, how are you? Like, how are you how are things going? How are you feeling? And he's like $1 million, which I think is a callback to 4. I think he says that to Ashley at one point, but it shows how the inexperience of Grace and the ultra experience of Leon and how they're both reacting to kind of the same situation. They're both very likable characters. Leon being one of my favorite characters in video games, arguably my favorite character in video games. But it was cool to see them bring more humanism to him. He's not just a super rock star that kicks ass and takes names. Like, he actually has feelings and emotions. And even though he doesn't always vocalize them, you can tell he's going through it. It makes it that much more impactful that you are on this mission going to save the world, or at least finish off what's happening in Raccoon City. It follows up that part, the part in between the outskirts of Raccoon City and getting to the police department is a really badass, like over the top, super. And it's funny that I'm bringing this part up because it might be the cheesiest part of the game, but I think it fits. I think it's awesome. It's style over substance, but when style is oozing that much, like, I don't need that much substance in that part. But you like ride up there's a skyscraper or like really tall building that's kind of at an angle, and Leon takes his motorcycle and climbs up it and then goes, and you get in a shootout with these big, like, ultra mutated dogs, which dogs being in like Resident Evil 2 when they were introduced there, dogs being old part of Leon's story, where you're shooting them. And the main antagonist, Victor Gideon, who I guess kind of says a lot that I'm just now bringing him up. I don't think he brings a lot to the story. I think he's creepy. I understand, I think, what he's doing. Like, he's trying to carry on the legacy of Dr. Spencer and fulfill what I guess his initial plan was before what happens in Resident Evil 1. But I guess it's the same thing with the other antagonist, Zemo. It feels like they're conduits for Leon and Grace's story to continue. And it could have been a lot of other villains, maybe even callback villains there. I guess maybe you get too fan servicey doing that. So I'm happy that they introduced new things, but like taking out Gideon didn't feel like a big monumental challenge. It didn't feel like cathartic, I guess, as much as I would want it to. It just ends in like a big tentacle monster fight. Zemo doesn't really, I thought it was really cool at first because they don't tell you who he is, and he kind of seems like Wesker survived. And they give hints here and there of him being a clone of Wesker. And clones have a lot to do with this story because all the test subjects were these little girls that seemed like they were cloned and made in laboratories. That way Spencer could test on them. And story-wise, I'm not sure if they were trying to make it ambiguous or I just maybe didn't read some of the documents that I should have. Maybe I didn't find them. But I think all the little girls are clones of Grace. Like, Grace was the initial one, or Grace is just someone that happens to look exactly like these girls. Like, they all have the white hair, which is like, I guess sounds like only one thing, but when you make their hairstyle exactly the same, you're making me think that they're all related in some way. Like, she's one of the clones. Zeno, you don't even get like a big fight with him. There are actually 2 endings. It gives you like a choice towards the end of how you want the ending to go. And how the videos you see of Grace's mom and Spencer in their interviews where they're talking, it seems like Spencer was starting to feel bad for what he had done, or maybe reluctant, or maybe just he didn't like how the outcome was going. Maybe because it almost makes you sympathize with him when he's the super evil guy that's ruined the world and he's selling bioweapons and he's doesn't have a care for humanity. So when you get to the end, it gives you the option of putting in a password to destroy the virus, the Elpis virus, or to release the Elpis virus. And you're kind of spending the whole game like, my goal is to destroy it. I'm not going to let this release or go out. But with these videos and the reluctancy that it seemed like he was going for, I actually chose to release it and see what happened there. And I guess that was the good ending. That's the good canonical ending. Turns out the Elpis virus is a vaccine and not a virus. It is like Spencer's way of making amends for what he did. He tried to develop a cure to get rid of the T virus. So that's how you get Leon cured of his T virus. They had like a specific virus they were calling it. It was like the Raccoon City plague or Raccoon City disease, where people that were there during like ground zero all seem to have it. Like Leon has it, Sherry has it. We don't see any Claire. We don't know if Claire has it. We don't see any Ada. We don't know if like Ada has it. I really thought we were going to see freaking fly. I really thought we were going to see some Ada at some point, because people kept hyping up, like, to me, like as an individual, like, oh, you're going to love like these cameos that pop up, these things that pop up. But really, the only big cameo was Mr. X, because what I thought was Albert Wesker is possibly a clone of Albert Wesker, so it's not really Albert Wesker. You don't even get to have a fight with him. He doesn't really bring anything to the table. When you're going through the last part of the game, he just kind of waits where you escaped from, and then you make your way back up there once you have like the password, you think. So he's not even like, it doesn't seem like he's pulling the strings, but I guess the people he works for, which is called the Connections, I don't know a whole lot about them. I guess they're a group that's always been in the background, like working on things. He's doing what he's doing for the Connections. I think it would have been a better ending canonically if Grace got her cathartic ending of maybe she's the one that takes out Victor, and you have Grace kind of get her badass moment to where she can maybe level up to being closer to like a Leon status, or one of our other older protagonists, how they're all badasses. They all have their moments. And then if Leon maybe fought the Wesker clone, Zeno, that doesn't happen. Zeno just dies because he takes the cure trying to make himself big mutated tyrant monster, but finds out it's a cure through that. I guess the other thing is, if you do the other ending, which I read online is not the canonical ending, it's kind of considered the bad ending, where you destroy it, that's when you get Leon dying. And I think that was a big thing I was anticipating throughout the whole game, is this is going to be Leon's last hurrah. It is not. Leon survives. Leon makes it to the end. He's now cured. If anything, he's better than he was at the beginning of the game, which I'm kind of glad it's not the end of Leon's story, because I wouldn't have liked how it ended up to there. It just felt kind of anticlimactic, like not getting that big boss fight, or him getting to interact with these other characters that he was with from the beginning, like Claire or Ada. Overall, I mean, who am I to nitpick a Resident Evil story? Resident Evil stories have always been all over the place. I think it's a decent story. Leon's gameplay, some of my favorite gameplay in a video game, not even just Resident Evil, just the feeling of badassery that you have, that you can parry everything, that you have these awesome weapons. There's a really cool charm that I got that made me use the sniper more than I ever did before, where you find a charm that gives you the ability of, if your sniper rifle doesn't have a scope on it, you deal extra damage. So I just started using that, and I would use my shotgun for like big groups of zombies if I needed that. But then when it came to boss fights, I would actually use my sniper when I never really use the sniper unless I noticed there's a big group and I could take them out just to make it easier when I got up there. Thought that was really cool. Oh, biggest complaint on the game, probably, most likely, no merchant. I wish they would have found a way to include the merchant. I don't even want them to have really a sound reason of how he's there. We don't know anything about the merchant in 4, as far as I know. That's one of those things where I can suspend my disbelief and you can just bring him back. He doesn't have to be like, oh, like I'm following you around, Leon. Now I'm one of the bad guys or something like that. I think if he was just like, this is what I do. I mean, in 8, they make references to the merchant with, I forget his name. The merchant in those games, the big dude, he like talks about his old friend and he makes like the "what are you buying" comment. Making it just be like a screen on a computer that you go to like buy weapons and upgrade, kind of lame. I mean, I'm not like mad about it. It's pretty standard, but I think they could have included one of the big fan favorite characters there at some point. Or maybe if we find something that references, I don't know. He's one of the most interesting characters in the games, in my opinion. He's super funny, super mysterious. And I think it's kind of a miss not including anything about him. But I also get, what does he bring to the story? But you can argue the same thing with the antagonists in this. What do they bring to the story? It's just kind of conclusions of what other people did in other games that now their subordinates are trying to follow up on. I don't know. When you've already used up like all of your main antagonists, it's kind of hard to throw someone in that feels on the same scale as them. Actually, I almost forgot. And I'm not sure if anyone has the full confirmation, but I think you fight Hunk in this. They just call him the commander, but one of the coolest fight. It's super brief, and honestly, it's better that's brief. They have like a mini Krauser fight where you're fighting a guy that's really good with knives, and even goes to like snap your neck, which is, I remember from like Resident Evil 4 Mercenaries playing as Hunk, like he was big on neck snapping. I think you fight and don't kill because they show someone that looks just like him. I mean, he looks like a lot of other people because he's just kind of decked out in tactical gear, but he like comes through and they're like, all the BSAA guys are dead, blah, blah, blah. So I think he survives. And I think the only reason you would have him survive is because it's Hunk. But I don't know. I think there's a lot that they can do to, I'm gonna let this truck pass. I think there's a lot they could do to make more impactful story in this with DLC, which kind of stinks that they didn't include enough, in my opinion, to like, I don't know. I don't think this is a story that's going to like stick with me. I think there's moments in it that are going to stick with me, but story wise, I don't know. It's a different time than it was in 2009 when Resident Evil 5 came out and people were like, yeah, it's okay for a Resident Evil game. I wouldn't say this story's like as bad as Resident Evil 5, even though I love Resident Evil 5. I'm a big defender of it. But we just hold video game stories to a higher caliber now. And I guess for what they lack in story being monumental, they make up for in gameplay. If you don't like the Leon parts, I don't know what to tell you. I think they're the best parts of the game. But you also have the Grace parts that you can go through. I think there's going to be a split in people that wish there was more Grace and wish there was more Leon. I'm on the wish there was more Leon side, which they did add like a mini game after you beat it, which just came out, I think, like a week ago. So it wasn't there initially for people, called Leon Must Die Forever. It's not Mercenaries mode, but it's kind of Mercenaries mode, but you get like upgrades and stuff. I don't know. I only did one playthrough of it. And I was like, you know what? I'll come back when DLC and stuff comes out. Or if I see some people playing it and it looks cool, I'll have it installed and I can play it again. But overall, I think final verdict, Resident Evil 9 is awesome. It feels like a cool culmination of all the gameplay that has been in the series from 7 through the remakes, and making all of that cohesive into one game. I think they did a really good job of. Even though I'm not big on the grace parts, I can say they are objectively good. I think they're terrifying. I think I would much rather if I could sit down with a friend and they love the grace parts, they can play all the grace parts and I'll play all the Leon parts. That would be the best way for me to replay it, even though I can't imagine someone not wanting to do the Leon parts because they're phenomenal. Resident Evil 9 is awesome. I don't think I like it more than like 4 Remake. I think the gameplay, the quality of life that they brought into 9 was somehow into a 4 Remake setting or something, that would be my favorite blend of a game. But I like the pacing of 4. I think 4 is scarier in the Leon parts, maybe because you're not as tanky, you're not as badass, even though you're a super badass in it. 4 Original is probably still my favorite. I think it's got the most replayability. There's not really parts in it that I like dread going back to play. I mean, you got like your water room and stuff, but even after you get there and you start remembering what you need to do, it's still fun. Probably don't like it. I mean, I would replay 5 a shit ton, but 5's super short, 5's super easy. 5's also you play with friends. I don't know. This is probably like easily a top 5 Resident Evil game. I don't know. I think it's great. I don't think it's the best Resident Evil game like I've been hearing everyone online say, but I do think it's phenomenal and I love it. Right now, it's probably my favorite game that's came out this year. And I'm happy to say that it's great. I think that's kind of all I got on Resident Evil 9. I'm interested for the DLC to come out. Actually, something not Resident Evil that I just saw. I might have to accidentally get back into Dead by Daylight again because they just announced Jason's getting added. I'm kind of surprised that they're able to do that with all the lawsuits and stuff with the rights going on with Jason. But I guess I think A24 has got their TV show. I think there's someone working on a movie and stuff. They're finally to a point where they want to get hype back up for Jason a little bit. So I'll probably re-download that, maybe play like 8 hours of it, get rage baited by survivors in that who have been playing for thousands of hours, and then I'll install it again. But yeah, I think that's about it. All right. Cool. Well, thank you for coming back to Dead Air. Sorry it took so long for me to get back to this. Work's been busy, life's been busy. It's sometimes hard just to like sit down and do something creative when you're mentally and physically exhausted from work and stuff. But it's summertime. I've got a little bit more free time now. I'm hoping to get maybe back in a routine. I think I say this every time I come back, but get in a routine of making these podcasts again. I don't even see them as like doing content. I enjoy talking about the things that I like and maybe starting a discourse with my friends who listen or strangers or mutuals that listen to it. I'd like to keep doing that. Anyway, smooches.